going to make our beef Wellington, which we have been doing since 1987 as far as we know from our records. And we're going to start by making what's called the duxelle. And the duxelle is basically a paste that's made with onions and finely chopped mushrooms and some spices. And we'll saute that in butter and just set that aside, and that'll become the paste that we spread on the dough. So we're going to start by slicing the green onions. Do a little bit of this to make it finer. And now we're going to do the mushrooms, which have been cleaned, and we'll drop into the processor. Sometimes the mushrooms tend to hang up, so we'll encourage them to get a little closer. Okay. Okay, that'll do it. As you can see, it's almost like a very fine paste, and you want that because it'll make it easy to spread when we put it on the dough. Next thing we're going to do is get a big fry pan and saute it in butter. Okay, that's about 4 tablespoons. We'll cook down the mushrooms and the green onions until all the liquid has evaporated, because once the mushrooms start to cook, they're going to give off water. Break that up a little bit, and this will probably take 10 to 15 minutes to cook down, so we'll just let it go on its own. Stir it occasionally. And then we'll add some salt and pepper and some marjoram. Okay, we'll add the onions in now. Now we'll just mix that up a little bit. We don't want it to be on a terribly high heat so things don't burn, but kind of cook it slowly so the liquids can all evaporate. Say that may take 15 minutes. We'll just let it go on its own until it gets closer to done, and we'll start watching until all the liquid is evaporated. And that'll do it. We need 2 teaspoons more or less of margarine. That's probably going to be close to it. The mushrooms are beginning to cook down, and we're getting a little less liquid, which is fine, because we want it to basically be pretty much dry before we add the finishing ingredients. You need a half a cup of cooked ham. We need 2 tablespoons of parsley chopped. Okay, so now we're going to just put a little of salt. And pepper. And we'll add the marjoram. We'll put in 2 teaspoons of flour. Which is just a thickening agent. And we'll add the broth. Then we'll just start stirring it until it comes together and we get rid of all the liquid. So we'll just continue cooking that down and stirring it until all the liquid evaporates. Once that's done, then we'll take it off the fire, add the parsley and the ham, and that's it. And then we'll just set it aside and start on the next portion of our Wellington, which will probably be to make the dough. We've cooked it down, the liquid pretty well evaporated, so now we're going to do the finishing piece, which is to add the parsley and the ham. Along with the parsley, and voila. Just combine it and then we'll set it aside, let it cool. Then we just refrigerate it until we're ready to apply it to the dough after we do the beef. So that is the story of duxelle.
I'm going to jump in here and show you how we're going to clean the tenderloin so you can save yourself some money by cleaning it yourself. So we have our tenderloin here. This is about a 6-pounder, and we have a boning knife, so that's all we need. First thing you're going to do is just with your hands, just take off the stuff that you can sort of pull off yourself. It's this layer of fat here. Okay, and that's going to be discarded. And what that does, it exposes a couple of things. First, you have your silver skin right here, which you want to get rid of. All right, and also, here's what we call, let me turn it this way so you can see better. This part here is called the chain. So we're going to kind of separate that out. It comes out really easily, all right? And then we're just going to take our knife and just follow the line here naturally. Don't throw the chain away, because this you can use, you clean it up a little bit, you can grind it up for a hamburger or chili or something really good like that. So we're just going to put that to the side. Okay, this side over here, this is the head right here, which you can use as a little Chateaubriand. It's a little roast for 2 people. Same thing, we're going to separate a little bit with our hands and then cut it right along the line here. Okay, and now you've got a really nice, beautiful piece there, which we can use for little steaks. Okay, now that's going to leave the silver skin here. So take your knife. By the way, this is the head end, this is the tail end. Okay, so we're going to take our knife real carefully underneath here. Just start a little bit that way. Okay, now pull it and run the knife to get that skin off. You don't want to take any meat with it, you just want to get that skin off. All the way through. Because this stuff you can't eat. Okay, now you've got that. You want to take as little meat as possible. You got that silver skin, we'll do that a couple times to get it all off of here. Now, we're just going to take a little bit, we got some fat here, we're going to take you're going to use some fat on here for flavor, right? But we want to take the stuff you can get off with your hands, get off with your hands. Some people kind of take their knife like this with the backside, clean off that way. That's one way to do it. You definitely don't want to take off all the fat because that's where the flavor is. Okay, so now the best part here is this part in the middle, like right here. We want to make it nice and uniform for our chef over here, right? So we're going to just cut the head off here, and we're going to hang on to that because that's really good stuff. We can make little medallions out of it. off. We're going to cut the tail off here, and we want about 9 inches. We're going to serve for 5 people. So 9 inches is about right there. We're going to save this. We're going to cut some medallions of this for steaks, which will be delicious. And this is our piece of meat. That's going to be wrapped up in the dough and cooked.
Okay, we're now making the dough, and that is a process of combining 3 3/4 cups of flour with about a teaspoon or so of salt. Mix that up. This flour is sifted. Then we start adding a total of a 1/2 pound of butter, which I'm cutting up in little cubes like so, and we put it in there, and then we start working it with whatever they call these things. And you just, what you got to do is the butter needs to be cold, and you just keep going like so until it cuts into the dough. It's a rather tedious process, and it takes time, and you'll get pieces of butter stuck on there, so you brush them off like that. And when you think that the pieces are broken up sufficiently, whatever that means, then you add in more butter. And we're going to just keep doing that until we add the full 1/2 pound of butter, 2 sticks, and then we're going to add a couple tablespoons of shortening like Crisco, and we'll put that in, and then we'll start adding the ice water, but we'll get to that later on when we finish this. We're going to start adding the ice water, and it's ice water we add a tablespoon at a time, or thereabouts, and work that into the flour butter mixture. And eventually what will happen, if we add the right amount of water, we'll end up with a stiff dough. So what we're doing is I'm mixing it by hand now, because as I add the ice water, the dough will begin to come together and form a ball, and I don't want to add any more any water than is necessary for it to become one solid mass. So we're just adding like a tablespoon at a time, and you can see now how it's beginning to get a little bit chunky. So even though I haven't used the full amount of water, the dough looks like a nice solid ball. I'm just hoping it's not too damp. And what we do now, we just cover it with saran and put it in the refrigerator until we're ready to do the next step. Okay. And we have a nice dough ball. Okay, so we're supposed to put this on at 600 degrees for a total of 6 minutes. Okay, now we're going to flip over to the third side, and the spatula I'm using is kind of special because we got it at a farmer's market or an open house sale, open air market in southern France a few years ago. So it made it kind of special for us. Okay, so we've been on the grill at close to 600 degrees for a total of 6 minutes. And I think I'm going to take a chance and just do this for a few seconds and see if we can brown that side. So now you've got nice brown marks, browning marks. So what do you call those marks, Mark?
Grill marks.
Good. We have nice grill marks on all sides, so that's cool. And we'll leave this on so we can scrape it clean. And we'll take the tenderloin inside and let it cool down to room temp. Okay, what we started doing, we've taken the dough out of the refrigerator and got it down to room temp. It's a difficult dough to work with, and I always have the doubt in my mind did I put the dough together right, because it tends to want to fall apart. I'm going to trim it down to roughly the size we'll need. We have a lot of extra dough, but we use that later in the year for other interesting things. I'm just guessing the size I need, but it's enough to completely envelop the beef, and you can see that even now it's longer than it has to be, and we'll probably trim that down more. Then of course we have to spread the duxelle on it, before we wrap it. So what we've done is we've trimmed the dough, because I make more dough than we need for the size of meat, and then I lay the beef on wax paper and put it on there to make sure it fits. It fits as it needs to be, because we don't want a lot of overhang on either side so the dough doesn't double up. And that looks about right. We do this. Yeah, and we'll make the dough meet at the bottom without overlapping, so that's cool. Okay, so we've committed to this size. Now the next thing we do is go back to our duxelle, and we take the duxelle and we spread it out on the dough. But you don't want to go too close to the edge, otherwise you have trouble wrapping it. Okay, now let's see if this is going to be about what we want. That's the top. So we put the top down. That looks about as good as it's going to get. So now we're going to pray. We're just wetting it. We're wetting the dough, so hopefully it'll stick to where we want it to stick and doesn't come apart. If we get lucky, it'll work. We try and avoid having, as I said before, having the dough overlap on itself, but there will be some of that, maybe not too much. Okay, so now we're going to just lift it up, bring it over like so. And seal it on the meat. And this side up. So there'll be a teeny bit of overlap, and I can't worry about that on the bottom, but not a lot. Okay, now we got to trim it. And as I said before, we don't want to get a lot of overlap of dough over dough, so I'll just trim it back. Okay, do the same over here. Get this out of the way. Okay, you bring the dough up on the side. Kind of give it a little love tap so it'll stay together. Keeping in mind now that we're looking at the underside, because we're going to flip this over with God's help and put it on the tray. Okay. We're trying something new I read about this year, completely preparing it the day before, putting it on the tray, and then tomorrow, Christmas Day, we'll just heat the oven, put it up in the oven at the proper time, and cook her. So, here we go. We're going to pick up the tenderloin, turn it over, like so. And that's basically all we're going to do now, since we're not cooking it until tomorrow. Now what we'll do tomorrow is we'll take an egg and we'll wash this with the egg to make it glisten, to make the dough sparkle more. And then we'll cover it with sesame seeds, and then we bake it. And this will serve 5 adults.